The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning at the Lunar Deep Space Array. Dr. Sarah Chen had been reviewing routine stellar data when the signal cut through the usual cosmic background noise with impossible clarity. As she stared at her monitor, her hands trembling slightly, she knew humanity would never be the same. The signal contained a simple greeting in perfect English: "To our dear cousins of Earth, we come in peace." The Kethra had arrived. Within hours, the world's media erupted with the news. First contact. Real, intelligent alien life. The Kethra presented themselves as a highly advanced civilization, their sleek crystalline ships taking position in high Earth orbit with a grace that made human spacecraft look primitive by comparison. Their ambassador, who called himself Nexus, appeared on screens worldwide, a tall, ethereal being with iridescent skin and eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. "We have watched your species grow," Nexus announced to the United Earth Council. "Your potential has drawn us across the stars." His words were measured, careful, each syllable carrying weight. Dr. Chen, now part of the primary contact team, felt something off about their visitor's perfect presentation. The Kethra shared technological gifts freely: medical advances that cured previously terminal diseases, energy systems that could power cities without pollution, and agricultural techniques that could end world hunger. But Sarah noticed patterns in their generosity. Each gift made Earth more dependent on Kethra technology. Each solution required regular maintenance from their advisors. In her secure lab beneath the Rocky Mountains, Sarah worked tirelessly to understand the alien technology. The Kethra had provided access to their historical and scientific databases as a gesture of goodwill, but something about the data felt too clean, too perfectly curated. Late one night, while cross-referencing linguistic patterns in their historical records, she found subtle inconsistencies that revealed careful editing. "They're hiding something," she told her research partner, Dr. Marcus Wong, showing him the evidence. "These records have been sanitized. Look at these gaps in their historical timeline, always around periods of expansion." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his usual skepticism giving way to concern. "But why share their database at all if they're trying to hide something?" "Because they never expected us to look this closely," Sarah replied, pulling up more data. "They think we're primitive. They've underestimated us." Their breakthrough came 3 months after first contact. Sarah's team discovered encrypted data embedded deep within the Kethra medical technology. When decoded, it revealed the truth: the Kethra were not saviors but colonizers. Their gifts were tools of subjugation, designed to make humanity dependent and compliant before the true invasion began. The evidence was overwhelming. Previous civilizations had fallen to this same strategy: given gifts, made dependent, and then stripped of their resources and autonomy. The Kethra saw themselves as gardeners of the galaxy, pruning and shaping younger species as they saw fit. Sarah took her findings to Admiral Helena Torres, head of Earth's Defense Command. The Admiral's office was sparse, military efficiency evident in every corner. As Sarah presented her evidence, Torres's expression darkened. "How long?" the Admiral asked. "Based on the patterns I've found, we have maybe 2 months before they begin the next phase," Sarah replied. "They'll start by suggesting upgrades to our defense systems. Once those are in place, they'll have control of our military infrastructure," Torres finished. "Doctor, what you're suggesting could start a war." "With all due respect, Admiral, we're already at war. They just don't think we know it yet." The next week passed in a blur of secret meetings and careful planning. Earth's leaders had to be convinced without alerting the Kethra to their discovery. Meanwhile, Sarah's team worked to understand and adapt the alien technology, looking for weaknesses in their seemingly perfect systems. The Kethra's fatal mistake was assuming humans would accept their gifts without question, that gratitude would blind them to subtle inconsistencies. They never considered that the very species they saw as primitive would be capable of unraveling their deception. As Sarah stood at her lab window one evening, watching the Kethra ships glitter like stars above, she thought about humanity's history. Every great civilization had underestimated those they considered beneath them. Every empire had fallen when they confused technological superiority with true advancement. The Kethra would learn, as so many others had throughout human history, that appearances could be deceiving. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their military might, it was in their ability to adapt, to question, to fight back when pushed into a corner. The next morning, as Nexus prepared to announce the Kethra's generous offer to upgrade Earth's defensive capabilities, he had no idea that humanity was already 10 steps ahead. The trap was about to spring, and the hunters would become the hunted. Sarah sent the final confirmation to Admiral Torres. Operation Counter-Snare was ready. As she watched Nexus approach the podium for his announcement, she allowed herself a small smile. The Kethra were about to learn a valuable lesson about underestimating humanity. Operation Counter-Snare never got the chance to deploy. The Kethra struck first. The attack began not with explosions or declarations of war, but with silence. Earth's communications network, supposedly upgraded by Kethra technology, went dark. Orbital defense platforms stopped responding to ground control. And in that terrible quiet, the Kethra revealed their true form. Their crystalline ships transformed, geometric patterns shifting like liquid metal, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden in plain sight. The elegant Ambassador Nexus appeared on all remaining functional screens, his ethereal features now sharp and predatory. "We gave you the chance to accept our guidance peacefully," he announced, his voice carrying none of its former warmth. "Your resistance to our subtle direction has forced our hand. The garden must be pruned for new growth to flourish." Admiral Torres stood in the emergency command center beneath NORAD, watching as the first wave of attacks targeted Earth's largest cities. But instead of the expected bombardment, the Kethra weaponry emitted pulses that disabled all technology within its range. Cars stopped in the streets. Hospitals went dark. The very infrastructure of modern civilization began to crumble. "They're not trying to destroy us," Sarah Chen realized, working frantically at a hardened terminal. "They're trying to force us back to a pre-industrial state. To make us dependent on their technology for survival." Commander James Rodriguez, leader of Earth's first spaceborne military unit, watched from the hidden lunar base Alpha as the Kethra methodically dismantled humanity's technological achievements. His team had been preparing for the worst since Dr. Chen's discovery, but this was beyond their worst-case scenarios. "Status report on the backup systems," he demanded, pacing the command center carved deep into the lunar rock. Lieutenant Maya Patel, their chief engineer, looked up from her station. "The isolated networks are holding, sir. The Kethra don't seem to know about our quantum-encrypted backup communications. We're getting reports from underground bases worldwide." The Kethra's strategy became clear as the hours passed. They weren't interested in wholesale slaughter, their goal was subjugation through technological dependence. Cities that accepted their protection received power and essential services restored through Kethra technology. Those that resisted remained in darkness. But humanity had a few surprises of their own. During the months of supposed cooperation, Dr. Chen's team hadn't just been studying Kethra technology, they'd been developing countermeasures. Hidden facilities worldwide had been preparing for this moment, building systems that combined human ingenuity with reversed-engineered alien tech. Commander Rodriguez initiated Operation Blackout, a last-resort plan that no one had hoped to use. Across the dark side of the moon, concealed launch bays opened. Hundreds of small, stealthy craft emerged, built with hybrid technology that the Kethra's sensors couldn't properly track. "They think they've pushed us back to the Stone Age," Rodriguez told his pilots during the final briefing. "Let's show them how dangerous, primitive, humans can be." The counterattack began at Earth's darkest hour. As the Kethra focused on consolidating their control over major population centers, Rodriguez's forces struck their supply lines. The hybrid fighters, piloted by Earth's best, targeted the seemingly invulnerable crystalline ships with weapons based on the Kethra's own technology, but modified in ways they never expected. Sarah Chen, working with a global network of scientists through the quantum-encrypted channels, had discovered a critical weakness in Kethra tech. Their crystalline structures, while incredibly advanced, had a fundamental flaw: they couldn't adapt quickly to unexpected energy frequencies. Their technology is perfect, she explained to Admiral Torres, but that perfection is their weakness. They've eliminated chaos from their systems, making them incredibly efficient but inflexible. Human technology, for all its flaws, is adaptable. The first real victory came when a squad of hybrid fighters, led by Captain Anna Kovac, managed to disable a Kethra command ship over Buenos Aires. The massive vessel's crystalline surface became clouded and brittle when exposed to the modified energy weapons, its perfect geometry failing against the chaotic, unpredictable patterns of human-altered technology. But the victory came at a cost. The Kethra responded with increasingly aggressive measures, no longer concerned with preserving infrastructure. Cities that showed signs of resistance faced orbital strikes that left nothing but crater-filled wastelands. In their hidden command center, Admiral Torres and her staff watched the casualty reports mount. "We're bleeding them," she observed grimly, "but they're bleeding us worse. We need something more than just hit-and-run tactics." The answer came from an unexpected source. Maya Patel, analyzing data from the disabled Kethra ship, made a discovery that would change the course of the war. The Kethra's technological superiority had made them arrogant. They'd never bothered to encrypt their internal communications properly. "They think in such linear patterns," Maya explained, her eyes bright with excitement despite days without sleep. "Their command structure is completely hierarchical. If we can disrupt their communication patterns, we can throw their entire system into chaos," Sarah finished, understanding immediately. As the first month of war drew to a close, humanity was battered but far from beaten. The Kethra had expected a quick submission once modern technology was disabled. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that grew stronger through adversity, that turned their own weapons against them, and that refused to follow their carefully calculated patterns of behavior. In their crystalline ships high above Earth, the Kethra began to experience something they hadn't felt in millennia: doubt. They had conquered dozens of civilizations, all following the same predictable patterns of resistance and submission. But humanity was different. Humanity was chaos incarnate, and chaos, they were beginning to learn, could shatter even the most perfect crystal. Maya Patel stood in the cramped lab of Lunar Base Alpha, surrounded by holographic displays showing the fractured remains of a Kethra communication protocol. For 3 days straight, she had been working on what she called Project Chaos, an effort to turn the aliens' perfect order against them. "Their entire civilization is built on patterns," she explained to Commander Rodriguez and Dr. Chen during an emergency briefing. "They don't just use patterns, they think in patterns. Their language, their technology, even their military strategies, everything follows precise, predictable sequences." Sarah nodded, pulling up her own research. "It's like they've eliminated randomness from their development. Every technological advance follows a predetermined path. They're so advanced because they've never taken a wrong turn, never explored a dead end. And that's their weakness," Rodriguez concluded, his military mind quickly grasping the implications. "They can't handle unpredictability because they've engineered it out of their society." The breakthrough came when Maya's team managed to fully decode the Kethra's quantum communication network. What they found was fascinating: the aliens didn't just share information, they shared consciousness. Each ship, each weapon, each piece of technology was part of a vast, interconnected network that operated with perfect synchronization. But perfect synchronization had a cost. A single disruption could cascade through their entire system. In underground bases and hidden facilities across Earth, humanity began to fight back in ways the Kethra could never have predicted. Instead of trying to match their advanced technology, humans embraced chaos and unpredictability. Dr. Marcus Wong, working from a concealed facility in the Australian outback, developed what he called quantum noise generators, devices that introduced random fluctuations into the Kethra's perfectly ordered systems. The effects were devastating. Their crystalline ships, used to operating in perfect harmony, began to experience glitches and failures. In Singapore's underground tech hub, a team led by Dr. Aisha Rahman created adaptive AI systems that could predict and counter Kethra attack patterns by deliberately introducing random variables. The aliens, unable to comprehend strategies that didn't follow logical progressions, found their carefully planned assaults falling apart. But the most significant development came from an unexpected collaboration between Maya's engineering team and a group of teenage hackers who had been keeping their local communities connected through jury-rigged networks. The teenagers' imperfect, patchwork approach to technology sparked an idea. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," Maya announced during a global strategy session. "We don't need to beat their technology, we need to introduce enough chaos into their systems to make them beat themselves." The plan was audacious. Using the decoded Kethra protocols, they would inject human-generated random data directly into the alien consciousness network. Not enough to be immediately detected, but enough to create tiny inconsistencies that would grow over time. Admiral Torres, watching the presentation from her hardened bunker, leaned forward. "You're talking about giving their entire civilization a collective nervous breakdown." "Essentially, yes," Maya confirmed. "Their society can't handle randomness. They've evolved beyond it. By introducing chaos into their network, we force them to experience something they've spent millennia trying to eliminate: uncertainty." The implementation wasn't easy. Thousands of small, stealthy drones were built in hidden factories, each carrying a quantum noise generator. Human pilots, chosen for their ability to think creatively and unpredictably, were trained to navigate through Kethra defenses. The first wave of drones was launched during what became known as Operation Pandemonium. As they approached the Kethra fleet, something unprecedented happened. The aliens, detecting the approaching craft, attempted to analyze their flight patterns, and failed. Each drone followed random trajectories that defied logical prediction. In their crystalline ships, the Kethra experienced confusion for the first time in their recorded history. Their perfect network, designed to share knowledge and consciousness, began spreading uncertainty instead. Ship commanders, used to receiving clear, precise orders, found themselves facing situations their extensive databases had no protocols for. The effect rippled through their fleet. Some ships began firing at shadows, their sensors overwhelmed by data that didn't fit any known patterns. Others stopped responding entirely, their crews paralyzed by the inability to determine the correct course of action. Sarah Chen, monitoring the operation from Lunar Base Alpha, watched in amazement as the mighty Kethra fleet began to fragment. "They're experiencing cognitive dissonance on a civilization-wide scale," she observed. "Their networked consciousness is their greatest strength, but right now it's turning into their greatest weakness." But the Kethra weren't defeated yet. As their ships withdrew to higher orbits, gathering in defensive formations, humanity prepared for their response. Whatever came next would be desperate and dangerous. A cornered enemy was often at its most lethal. Maya Patel stood at her workstation, watching the chaos unfold on her monitors. She thought about the perfect, crystalline ships above, and the arrogant beings who thought they could reshape humanity into their own ordered image. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in spite of their chaos, it was because of it. As the Kethra fleet regrouped, Earth's defenders prepared for the next phase of the war. They had shown that humanity could hurt these supposedly invincible beings. Now they needed to prove they could win. The real battle was about to begin. The Kethra's response to Operation Pandemonium came 3 days later. Their ships descended from high orbit in perfect geometric formations, but something had changed. The crystalline vessels had been modified, their surfaces now covered in dark, light-absorbing material that seemed to ripple like oil on water. "They're adapting," Sarah Chen observed from the command center, her voice tight with concern. "They're trying to protect themselves from the quantum noise by adding randomness to their own systems." Commander Rodriguez studied the tactical displays, his expression grim. "They're learning from us. Using our own chaos against us." But Maya Patel was smiling. No, she said, her fingers flying over her console. They're trying to simulate chaos. But they're doing it mathematically, following patterns. Look at the formations, they're still perfectly spaced, just with random elements added at calculated intervals. The Kethera attack was devastating but predictable. Their ships targeted Earth's remaining military installations with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself, creating localized time distortions that aged buildings and equipment into dust in seconds. But their movements, despite their attempts at unpredictability, still followed discernible patterns. Humanity's response came from an unlikely source. Dr. Aisha Rahman's AI systems, now integrated with Maya's quantum noise generators, had evolved beyond their original programming. The AIs had learned to predict not just where the Kethera would attack, but how they would attempt to be unpredictable. It's like watching someone try to write random numbers, Aisha explained during an emergency council meeting. True randomness can't be forced. The Kethera are so bound by logic that even their attempts at chaos follow rules. The counteroffensive began with what appeared to be a desperate last stand. Earth's remaining military forces gathered in obvious defensive positions around key cities. The Kethera, their tactical computers calculating a 99.98% chance of victory, took the bait. As the alien fleet moved to engage, humanity revealed its true strategy. Hidden beneath the obvious military targets were thousands of quantum resonators, devices that amplified and reflected the Kethera's own energy weapons. When the aliens fired, their perfectly calibrated weapons created a feedback loop that rippled through their neural network. Captain Anna Kovac led the first wave of attack from her hybrid fighter, now equipped with technology that could interface directly with human brain patterns. They wanted perfection, she transmitted to her squadron. Let's show them what beautiful chaos looks like. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for centuries to come. Human fighters, their movements guided by pure instinct rather than tactical computers, danced through the Kethera formation. Each pilot's neural patterns were different, creating a symphony of chaos that the aliens couldn't predict or counter. In orbit, the massive Kethera command ships began to show signs of strain. Their crystalline surfaces, designed to maintain perfect symmetry, developed cracks and imperfections. The quantum feedback was affecting not just their weapons, but their entire hierarchical system. Dr. Marcus Wong, monitoring the battle from his Australian facility, detected something unprecedented. The Kethera network is fragmenting, he reported. Individual ships are beginning to exhibit independent behavior. They're evolving. The observation proved crucial. As the neural network broke down, some Kethera ships began acting autonomously for the first time in their species' history. A few ceased fighting entirely, their crews experiencing individual thought patterns that had been suppressed by their collective consciousness for millennia. Admiral Torres watched from her command center as the battle unfolded. They're not just fighting us anymore, she realized. They're fighting themselves. Their perfect unity is becoming their perfect prison. The turning point came when a group of Kethera ships, their neural networks completely severed from the collective, attempted to communicate directly with Earth forces. Their message was halting, imperfect, and all the more meaningful for it. We understand now, the transmission began. Perfection is stagnation. Unity without diversity is death. Maya Patel, analyzing the transmission, confirmed what they had hoped. Exposure to human unpredictability hadn't just challenged the Kethera militarily, it had begun to change them fundamentally. The very chaos they had sought to eliminate was awakening something long dormant in their species, the capacity for individual thought and growth. But victory was far from assured. The main Kethera fleet, still bound by their ancient programming, prepared for what would clearly be their final assault. Their remaining ships gathered in high orbit, their crystalline surfaces now crawling with visible energy patterns. They're going to try to end this with one massive strike, Rodriguez announced to the assembled Earth forces. They'd rather destroy themselves than admit their philosophy might be wrong. As humanity prepared for the final battle, Sarah Chen made a discovery that would change everything. Hidden in the original Kethra database, beneath layers of perfect encryption, she found evidence that their species had once been different. Before their pursuit of perfection, before their elimination of chaos, they had been creators, artists, dreamers, not so different from humans. The question now was whether that spark of creativity, of true randomness, could be reawakened before it was too late. The fate of both species would be decided in the next few hours. The final battle began at dawn. The remaining Kethra fleet, their ships pulsing with accumulated energy, descended through Earth's atmosphere in a display of power that turned the sky into a crystalline light show. But beneath the spectacular display, Sarah Chen saw something else: desperation. "Look at their formation," she pointed out to Admiral Torres. "It's too perfect, too rigid. They're trying to hold on to their programming even as it falls apart." From their command center, they watched as humanity's last defensive line took shape. Every surviving ship, every piece of hybrid technology, every quantum resonator had been positioned according to Maya Patel's final strategy, a strategy that deliberately included random elements that even she couldn't predict. Commander Rodriguez's voice crackled over the quantum-encrypted channel. "All units, remember your training, but more importantly, remember what makes you human. They expect patterns. Give them chaos." The first wave of Kethra ships launched their attack, firing weapons that distorted spacetime itself. But humanity was ready. The quantum resonators activated, not just reflecting the energy but amplifying it with random fluctuations that rippled through the alien neural network. Captain Anna Kovac led her squadron through impossible maneuvers, each pilot's neural interface translating pure human instinct into flight patterns that defied prediction. "They want to see what humanity can do," she broadcast to her team. "Let's show them everything." In orbit, Dr. Marcus Wong's quantum noise generators reached full power, flooding the Kethra network with chaos. The effect was immediate and devastating. Ship after ship began showing signs of individualization, their perfect formations breaking down as crew members experienced independent thought for the first time in generations. Maya Patel, monitoring the battle from Lunar Base Alpha, detected something extraordinary. "The quantum feedback isn't just affecting their ships," she reported excitedly. "It's rewriting their neural patterns. They're remembering." Sarah Chen's discovery about the Kethra's artistic past proved crucial. As the quantum chaos disrupted their programming, ancient memories began surfacing. Some Kethra ships started moving in ways that resembled dance more than combat, their crews rediscovering a creativity that had been suppressed for millennia. The Kethra High Command, led by the being once known as Ambassador Nexus, fought against the change. Their flagship, a massive crystalline structure that dwarfed all other vessels, began charging what was clearly meant to be a final, apocalyptic weapon. "They'll destroy themselves and us before accepting change," Admiral Torres realized. But humanity had one last card to play. Dr. Aisha Rahman's evolved AI systems had completed their analysis of the Kethra consciousness. Working with Maya's team, they had developed what they called a freedom virus, a program that didn't attack the Kethra network, but simply showed each individual their own potential for growth and change. As the flagship's weapon reached critical power, humanity launched their final gambit. Thousands of small drones, each carrying the freedom virus, penetrated the crystalline hull. The effect was immediate and profound. The weapon powered down as the crew began experiencing something they had forgotten millennia ago: choice. Nexus's last transmission was filled with something no one had ever heard in a Kethra voice before: emotion. What have you done to us?" Sarah Chen responded, her voice firm but compassionate. "We haven't done anything to you. We've simply reminded you of who you used to be. Who you can be again." The battle ended not with a dramatic explosion or a decisive strike, but with a moment of profound realization. Across the Kethra fleet, ships began powering down their weapons. The rigid formations dissolved as individual commanders made their first independent decisions in countless generations. In the aftermath, as the dust settled on a changed Earth, humanity faced a new challenge: helping their former enemies rediscover their lost humanity. The Kethra, their perfect unity shattered, began a journey of rediscovery. Some chose to remain in their collectives, but now it was a choice rather than a programming. Maya Patel, watching the Kethra ships now moving in beautiful, unpredictable patterns across the sky, smiled. "They thought they were coming to perfect us," she said. "Instead, we reminded them that perfection isn't about eliminating flaws, it's about embracing them." Admiral Torres stood with her command staff, watching the sunrise over a scarred but unbroken Earth. "They asked, 'Is that all?' when they first saw our technology, our military, our development," she mused. "They never understood that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our weapons, it's our ability to embrace chaos, to evolve, to change." In the decades that followed, the story of the Kethra War became more than just a tale of victory against impossible odds. It became a reminder that true strength lies not in perfection, but in the beautiful unpredictability of life itself. The Kethra, once humanity's greatest threat, became their most profound teachers, a living reminder that sometimes, the greatest achievement isn't in reaching perfection, but in the chaotic, wonderful journey of simply being human. As for the question that started it all, is that all? Humanity's answer had become clear. They were just getting started.